My name is Steve Linscombe, and I'm representing the LSU AgCenter today. I'm going to talk a little bit about I've kind of had a change in what I do on a day-to-day basis. But I was asked to come and talk a little bit about Varieties, the Louisiana Varieties, and the Louisiana Variety Program. A lot of what I'm going to show you today comes directly from this publication that we put out every year, Rice Varieties and Management Tips. I did not approve them putting that cover photo on there, but at this point in time, they said they didn't really care anymore about what I approve and don't approve. This is a very busy table, I realize that, but this publication, if you want a hard copy of it, just send me an email and I'll make sure you get it, but probably more practically, this is available electronically on the LSU AgCenter's webpage. So basically what we've got in this slide right here, we have a number of locations where we do variety trials around the rice growing areas of the state of Louisiana. For example, this is a rice station. This is Acadia Parish, Evangela and Jeff Davis. This is Lake Arthur. This is a St. Joe location. And the last one is St. Landry. And these are all of the varieties, including the Rice Tech hybrids and how they perform at these various locations in 2017. And as we normally always see, certainly the Rice Tech hybrids do have a significant yield advantage. Last year, our milling yields were, for the most part, not quite what they typically are, but we still did have some good millers. You can see I'm going to talk a little bit about the Provisia variety. It came in kind of towards the lower end of the table, but when you compare it, it is pretty competitive with a couple of the varieties we're still growing quite a bit of acreage of, such as CL 111 and Mermentau. We'll make some other comments about the Provisia line a little bit in a few minutes. So basically what we do each year is we kind of split out the varieties and the hybrids that we put on our recommended list. And these are the recommended Clearfield lines, 2 Clearfield hybrids, 5 pure lines, and we do have the CL 272 medium grain in here as well. So the newest Louisiana Clearfield pure line out there is CL 153. We've been talking about this variety for several years now, and basically what we're saying about it, it's very competitive with CL 151. CL 151 has been a very popular variety for a number of years now. The weaknesses of CL 151 is it's more blast susceptible than we'd like to see. It has a little bit more chalk than we'd like to see, and it's more lodging resistant. It's susceptible than we'd like to see. So we think the 153 addresses those issues. Year in and year out, the yield potential might be slightly less than a 151, but it has very, very good quality, very low chalk, very good blast resistance, and it's not immune to lodging, but it is going to stand better than CL 151. The other 2 newer Clearfield pure lines, CL 172 from Arkansas and CL 163 from Mississippi, also are very, very good varieties. The CL 172 is probably the highest quality pure line that's out there available today. It has extremely good quality, and it has actually got us on a limited amount back into the Nicaraguan market. We've had some go in last year, identity preserved, the 172, and we have hopefully going to have about twice as many 100 weights go in this year, all of the 172. The 163, the Mississippi line, is a high amylose, and it's going to replace a lot of that market, it looks like. It's going to replace some of these specialty contract grown acres of high amylose varieties have and will continue to shift to the 163. The CL272, it's a good high yielding Clearfield medium grain. I think everyone's aware that our medium grains to some extent live and die by Kellogg's approval, because they use a lot of southern medium grain in their processing. We did get some good news earlier this week from Kellogg's that they had done one plant run and it was very, very favorable. What their plans are, they want to run the CL272 through one of their plants for about a month before they'll give it final approval. But at this point in time, the Kellogg's report we got this week was good. It was favorable. So we will have a new Clearfield release from the Crowley Station this year. It's going to be a Clearfield Jasmine. We've been looking at this line for a number of years. Rick Zonbreaker did have a foundation seed increase field this past year. It's going to be, we think, a very good Jasmine line. It certainly is going to have the Clearfield technology as an option. From a yield standpoint, it's close to our highest yielding Clearfield lines, perhaps slightly below. It's certainly got a yield advantage when we compare it to Jasmine 2. And Jasmine 2 is the most commonly grown jasmine variety today. It's got a significant yield advantage over Jasmine 2. Also has extremely high milling quality. Well up in the 60s, and it has extremely low chalk. So one of the things that we do to evaluate these jasmine lines is certainly we cook them, we qualitatively evaluate the aroma, but we can also put these lines in a gas chromatograph and actually quantitatively measure what we call the 2AP, that's the 2-acetylpyrroline values. And 2AP is what the chemical component in the grain that causes the aroma. And the 2AP values for the Clearfield Jasmine, while slightly lower than Jasmine 2, are very similar to the imported Thai Jasmine, which is very, very important. And this will be sold under the variety name CLJ01. I just threw this table in. This is our non-Clearfield varieties and hybrids, the recommended list for 2018. And again, this information, this table, if you want to take and look at it at your leisure, is available in our Rice Varieties and Management Tips publication. And this is, again, the conventional varieties. So one very good looking line that we think is going to have a big place for us in Louisiana and certainly across the South is the new Arkansas medium grain Titan. This was developed by Dr. Shaw. It's Stuttgart. Extremely high yield potential, pretty good blast resistance, similar in height to Jupiter, and it's a little bit earlier than Jupiter in maturity. Jupiter has been the mainstay in our southern medium grain market. I'm convinced that Titan is probably going to take quite a bit of that Jupiter acreage going forward. So just some of the things that are being looked at the station in Crowley. We do have some early experimental lines that have shown some pretty significant yield advantages compared to our current varieties. These are very early in the testing program. The earliest that any of these would be released would probably be 2 to 3 years down the road. but it's good to come out of a testing year and see numbers like that. It gives you some hope for the future that we've got some potential new varieties coming through the pipeline. So the Provisia, this technology will be available commercially in 2018. Alvin's going to come behind me and tell you about the technology. We've been working for several years now to try to come up with a Provisia variety. It will be out there and marketed. The variety this year is PVL-01. This is not going to be the highest yielding variety we've got out there. We think it's going to be competitive. If you look at the yield numbers, as I showed earlier, it's comparable to some of the things like Cocodrie, a little bit under CL111. The point I would make on all of this data that we're showing you here, when we do yield trials in Louisiana, we don't use any fungicides. I think that if you get this in a commercial setting and you put a fungicide on it, as opposed to the hybrids, we need fungicides in most of our pure line varieties. So I think a fungicide used on this variety is really going to make those numbers a little bit more competitive. I will tell you that in our foundation field we had on the station this year, where we did use fungicides, the PVL-01 was actually better than the CL111 from a yield standpoint, and not too far behind the 153. The other advantage the line has is from a quality standpoint. It's a very long grain. It's actually over 7 millimeters, and the chalk values are extremely low. In fact, the chalk values are lower than the old Cypress variety that was kind of the mainstay of quality for many, many years. So we do have a promising Clearfield Provisia line that we're looking at. When we were doing the first crosses, the line that we got from BASF, we crossed that line with some of our better conventional varieties. One of the things we had to screen for very hard was chalk. The donor line donated a lot of chalk. So what we had to do, it was something that we really put a lot of time and effort into screening for low chalk. So the PVL 108 was one of the original lines, a comparable in the chain to where the PVL 01 came from. We're looking at it as a yield advantage. It's got about a 10% yield advantage over the PVL 01. It's got improved milling. It's got comparable low chalk. It is earlier. It's slightly taller than the PVL 01, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of difference in lodging. It does have somewhat of a shorter grain, and if we got a question on this line, it's the grain length. We think it's acceptable, but it certainly is shorter in length than the PVL 01. So we do have a hybrid program at the station in Crowley. Just an update. We're actually at the stage now where we're looking at the possibility of starting conversations about commercialization of a hybrid. We've got a Clearfield hybrid and a non-Clearfield hybrid that we're looking at. Not quite the yield advantage of the Rice Tech hybrids. A little better milling yields, but these two hybrids are comparable to our pure lines as far as the chalk values. So we haven't made a decision on either one of these, but we actually have the S in the R lines an increase in Puerto Rico, and we might actually have a very limited commercial seed production on one or perhaps both of these lines in the summer of 2018. So we're coming with our hybrids. We're not there yet, but we hope to be fairly shortly. We also looked at some new hybrid combinations. First year they were looked at this year. And these are both Clearfield and Provisia hybrids, and very promising. Again, first year we've looked at the test crosses, but you can see from the yield data that there does appear to be something there that we might be able to take advantage of. One thing, and Dr. Jim Ward is in charge of our hybrid program at Crowley. He's putting a lot of effort into trying to see how we can increase the research hybrid seed efficiency. And he had a lot of these little three-sided houses out there this year, and it really improved his ability to get good hybrid seed without a lot of contamination from pollen flying around from other sources. So as I mentioned earlier, I have kind of taken on some different responsibilities. I retired from the LSU AgCenter in the fall. Went to work for the USA Rice Federation as director of the Rice Foundation. And I just want to make a little pitch. One thing I'll be doing in this new position is I will be responsible for the Rice Leadership Development Program. This is a program that is sponsored by Rice Tech, American Commodities Company, and John Deere. And we have a new class that starts every year. The class is made up of 5 producers and 2 industry people. And if you're under 45 years old and involved in the rice industry, I very much encourage you to think about applying for this program. The application time frame is in the late summer, early fall. So if you want to make sure that you have information about this program when the application time is upon us, just take my email address and drop me a line, and I'll make sure that you get the information on the program. But I do want to encourage anybody that's in the rice industry to think about this. I actually went through the program probably 20 years ago, and it was one of the best things I've done in my career. So with that, Alvin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I got a real quick question for you. Just dealing with rice quality. When we look at rice quality, it's whole, total, and shock. What's the most important component to have of those 3? Is it whole, or is it shock, or how's that?
All of the above.
All of the above. So you want a high milling and low shock.
Well, the thing of it is, you talked about it earlier in your talk. You know, some of the things we've got are decent head rice at 20 and 18%. You get down to 14 and 15%, it's a lot lower. It's important to have high head rice yields, but as you mentioned in your talk earlier, it's also very important to have that window where as the harvest moistures continue to decrease, it doesn't crash and burn. That's what you want to avoid. So that's very important, but in this day and age, especially with what we've dealt with over the last 8 or 10 years with, you know, some of our markets and some of the complaints, I think chalk is important as head rice yields. I really do. And the other one that we probably don't pay enough attention to is uniformity of grain length. That's, you know, we get complaints about chalk, and that's the #1 complaint we get, but that's uniformity of grain length is 1B.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
Behind that.
How will the hybrid varieties developed by LSU, how will they be sold or brought to market, or what's the...
We're still, and the question is, how will we commercialize hybrids? You know, we're not going to produce a seed. I mean, that's not what we're in business for. So we will partner with some entity out there to do that. But who that is, we haven't even determined yet. Thank you.
So back on the chalk value, is it all aggregate? Is it all genetic, or is a lot of the chalk?
Well, that's a very good point. It's both. You have 3 different types of rice varieties when it comes to chalk. You have varieties that have low chalk, and as the temperature increases, that chalk might increase a little bit, but it's pretty stable. You have others that under favorable weather conditions, you have very low chalk. As the temperature comes up, you got more and more chalk. That's what most of the varieties and most of the hybrids, they fit in that category. Then you have some others, the Milagro that has been grown through the years, it's always going to have choke. But it's probably genetics and environment play equal parts with a lot of our varieties.
But the environment part is almost always high nighttime temperatures.
Almost always high temperatures. And it's we don't know, we think nighttime is more important than daytime, but they're both important. And the reason we say that is because you look at California. California will get up in the 90s and 100s during the day, but they're getting back down to the 60s at night. And chalk's not a big issue out there.